The myth of the male genius. Have you noticed that women are often erased from history? Let's get into it. For so many of these great men that we celebrate, there's a woman whose work he copied or outright stole. Welcome back to Stay at Home Feminist. Your soft girl era starts here, along with the fall of the patriarchy. I'm CC Binx, your favorite feminist with a TikTok addiction. And today we're talking about the tortured male genius. You've seen him, you know the type, the brooding man with a god complex, who also probably has bad hygiene and a trail of women that he forgot to credit. But here's the truth. For every man that's had a statue named after him or had a chapter in the history book written about him, there's a woman who made it possible. And today we're going to be talking about the woman who not only made it possible, but who actually did the work and then were plagiarized or stolen from and never credited for the work that these great men were credited for. And with that, we'll be digging into the myth of the male genius, and we'll talk about how the patriarchy props it up and why so many brilliant women end up as the footnote or totally erased in their own stories. So without further ado, let's meet some of the women who history has ghosted and the mediocre men who stole their work. Have you heard about Rosalind Franklin? If you haven't heard about Rosalind Franklin, you've definitely heard about what she discovered. Franklin was a chemist and an X-ray crystallographer. No idea what that is, but okay. Whose photo 51 revealed DNA's double helix structure. Again, all of this kind of above my pay grade to explain, but keep with me. So she captured photo 51, which was basically a high resolution X-ray sort of image of DNA. And it's the first time people are seeing its structure in that way. So it was a pretty big deal. In fact, this photo is credited as the missing piece essential to providing the evidence that there is a double helix going on in DNA. I'm not a scientist. Don't ask me to explain it to you. Her colleague, Maurice Wilkins, goes behind her back and takes photo 51 to these two other guys, Watson and Crick, who use it to build this model and then publish the model and write a whole paper on it and don't credit our girl Rosalind at all. So now James Watson and Francis Crick are the ones who are credited for figuring out the double helix in the DNA structure. This was all in 1953, by the way. This model they made of the DNA structure changed the course of science, or at least biology, science, biology, tomato, and it earned them the Nobel Prize in 1962. And when they won this Nobel Prize, they shared it with little snitch boy, Maurice Wilkins, but they never shared any credit with Rosalind Franklin, whose picture was foundational to their discovery. And the shadiest part is that James Watson goes on to write a memoir, and when he's talking about Rosalind Franklin, he mocks her and he calls her belligerent, calls her uninteresting, downplays her brilliance. And even the guy who made this model with him, Crick, was like, dude, chill. Why are you going so hard in the hate? And even Maurice Wilkins, who stole this picture from her, essentially was like, yeah, guys, she deserves credit. Not that saves him for his sins. But yeah, so basically a guy who worked in the lab with her took this picture without her knowing, and she didn't get any of the credit. So yeah, now decades later, historians and scientists recognize that she was essentially erased from one of the most important scientific discoveries of the 20th century. But she was long gone by then. She died in 1958 and she was only 37, which feels very young. And the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded in 1962. And they don't give Nobel Peace Prizes to people after they die. You have to be alive to accept one. So she wouldn't have gotten it anyways, but it would have been the decent thing to do to say her name in the speech. So yeah, she was literally erased by her own death and by sexism. So thanks for giving us the blueprint of life, Rosalind. This one's for you. Curious, have you heard that story before? Speaking of women in STEM whose work was stolen from them, have you heard of Lise Meitner? I might be saying this name wrong, so apologies if I am. Lise Meitner was a brilliant Austrian physicist and one of the very few women in physics in the 20th century. And she co-discovered nuclear fission, which is essentially the process of splitting atoms, and that led to both nuclear power and atomic weapons. So without her, there would have been no Manhattan Project and yada, yada, yada. And so what had happened was she was working for decades with a German chemist named Otto Hahn. They were lab partners, co-authors, and they were buddies. And for years, they collaborated on experiments, most involving uranium atoms, okay? But Meitner was Jewish, and Hitler rose to power in the 1930s, and things got very dangerous very fast. She was stripped of her academic titles in Germany, which was par for the course for Nuremberg laws. And if you don't know, the Nuremberg laws banned Jews from doing a lot of things. And one of those things was civil service and academia. And in 1938, when Austria was annexed to Germany, she was officially in Nazi territory and at risk of arrest. So she fled. Her colleagues helped her escape in secret. Like, she literally fled in the middle of the night, and she went through Netherlands into Sweden, where she lived in exile for the remainder of her life. And after she fled, her lab partner, Han, continued to do the work that they were doing together on his own. In late 1938, Han sent her the results of something he'd been working on because he couldn't figure it out. Basically, uranium atoms seemed to be splitting and he couldn't understand what was happening. Obviously, so this is like the simplified version because I am not a scientist, but Meitner and her nephew, who was also a physicist, whose name was also Otto Frisch, put the pieces together. They cracked the code, they figured it out. They were like, we are witnessing nuclear fission. But when Han published the discovery that she made because he couldn't connect the freaking dots, he left her name out of it entirely, even though she was the one who explained it to him. So he published that in 1939, and in 1944, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, and Meitner wasn't even mentioned. But what's super annoying is that she was actually nominated multiple times, and the committee kept being like, all this is too theoretical, so she never won the prize herself. So yeah, basically she was a woman, she was a Jew, and she was a refugee. All things that the scientific community didn't know how to acknowledge in the 1940s, apparently. So instead of giving her the Nobel Prize she deserved, they gave her like a little footnote somewhere. But she kept doing science, and she refused to work on the atomic bomb, and she never stopped pushing for peace. So not only was she an amazing genius woman in STEM, she was a pacifist. So we love to see it. So it seems like some of the most cutting edge scientific discoveries were done by women. Surprise, surprise. One of the most notorious examples of this was actually made into a movie called Hidden Figures. You might have seen the movie. If you haven't, or even if you have, let's talk about one of the most iconic cases of a genius being erased from their work. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie, the genius we're talking about in this moment was a Black woman who was working in a segregated office while calculating math that put the man on the moon. These anti-DEI people will be able to handle this conversation. Yes, I am talking about Katherine Johnson. She was a mathematician at NASA when it was still segregated, which is crazy to think about, workplaces being segregated like that. And her job literally was to calculate the numbers that would determine whether astronauts live or died. Like, let that sink in. Like, we won't share our office space with you or our bathrooms with you, but we'll let you calculate numbers that are like life and death. Like, okay. So Katherine worked in the West Area Computers Division, which was segregated from the other parts of NASA, I guess. Essentially the like sanitized NASA way of saying like, here's where we put the Black women, because the office was segregated. The bathroom was segregated. The coffee pots segregated, but the work wasn't. These women were calculating the trajectories, the reentry paths, the launch windows, all without credit, titles, or even access to the meetings where the big decisions about their math were being made. But here's when it gets real. When NASA was preparing to send astronaut John Glenn into orbit in 1962, they had computers to run the flight path calculations, but Glenn did not trust them. And he said, and I quote, "Get the girl to check the numbers." And by the girl, he meant Katherine Johnson, a white male astronaut and the hero of the space race, would prefer to put his life in the hands of this Black woman's math than the computer's math. And he refused to fly until Katherine personally verified all of the equations. And guess what? She was right in the math she was doing. Shocker, except for it's not. And she went on to help with Apollo 11, the mission that put the first man on the moon. And later, her calculations helped bring Apollo 13 safely back to Earth after a near fatal disaster. So yeah, she was the GOAT, and still for decades, she wasn't credited. No awards, no mentions in textbooks, just a footnote in the shadow of NASA's white male trajectory. She didn't get her flowers until 2016 when Hidden Figures came out and told the world what she did. She was 98 years old. So no, the myth of the male genius isn't just about credit, it's about power. It's about erasure. It's about who gets to be called brilliant, who gets to be a space hero, and who has to do their job while walking half a mile to use a bathroom because they're not allowed in certain bathrooms. Katherine Johnson didn't just do her job, she made space travel possible. So yeah, I don't think we should see her as a hidden figure. I think we should see her as the blueprint. Just saying. I actually haven't watched Hidden Figures, and I was like, I should probably watch it before talking about it on this episode. But I also like didn't want to like just go off of Hidden Figures. I kind of wanted to do my own research. So I'll watch it this weekend maybe. So those are just 3 examples examples in STEM. I didn't even get into Alfred Hitchcock or the Big Eyes paintings or anything like that. There's so much more that you can unravel if you pull out this thread. Those are just like 3 examples. I wanted to do women in STEM because women in STEM aren't highlighted enough as it is. So like even the ones that are working in it are like being erased, which is crazy. We also at this moment in time are having women and Black people and people of color erased from federal websites. So yeah, this felt like a really good time to talk about the systemic and historical way that history erases women of color, Black women, and Black people as well as people of color from history. By omitting their names from the stories where they were key figures, you're erasing them. By making these stories about the man who got on the moon and not acknowledging the Black woman who put him on the moon at a time where America was segregated, like that's a crazy point of view on that story. That's a crazy point of view on that story. And the other side of this coin that I want to get into is not only are we erasing women, when we do this, we are also adding or creating this narrative of like men are so smart, and because they are so smart, we allow them not to be a fully formed human, and we give them so much more leeway because like no one else could do what they do, so we'll just let them have it because they're so smart. You know, it's this sort of like tortured genius trope, and it's like, is he a tortured genius or is he just emotionally unregulated? Because if you can't calm your nervous system down on your own, if you can't like control your emotions on your own, like how smart are you? We see it time and time again where like being brilliant but difficult is super romanticized if it's a man, super unacceptable if it's a woman. I mean, Steve Jobs was known for screaming at his employees, humiliating his staff, abandoning his daughter, but he's remembered as a visionary. And he was. Like, 2 things can be true. Like, we all have iPhone. You're probably watching this on an iPhone. Like, shout out to Steve Jobs. And also, like, he wasn't just the person who created the iPod and the iPhone. He was also a human being, and he was kind of an asshole. And why do we accept that when it's someone who is smart and powerful being an asshole? Why is that okay? It's not. It's not okay. So yeah, did you know that Steve Jobs denied the paternity of his first child? Her name is Lisa Brennan Jobs. And for years, even though DNA tests confirmed he was the father, he publicly claimed he was sterile. How unhinged. When Lisa was born in 1978, talk about gaslighting, like so unhinged. He refused to pay meaningful child support. He allowed Lisa and her mother to live on welfare, despite the fact that he was a millionaire at the time. And when he did acknowledge her and the fact that she was her daughter, eventually he was like emotionally distant and cruel to her. So yeah, maybe we shouldn't glorify this man so much. Speaking of men that we shouldn't glorify, for the record, Picasso was abusive to women, and he said, there are only 2 types of women, goddesses and doormats, end quote. And Hemingway was an alcoholic who described women as distractions, but we're still forced to read The Sun Also Rises in school. And the part that's so annoying for me is that like women don't get that grace. Like, not only are we being erased from history, we're so dismissed. When women are difficult, they're labeled as crazy, unlikable, hysterical, yada, yada, yada. There was like, I just saw like a few weeks ago, this clip of Doechii on the way to the Met Gala, and basically she like didn't want her outfit to be seen and is like saying like, hey, hand me an umbrella, hand me an umbrella. And the internet was like going crazy, being like, Doechii screams at assistants and berates them, da da da. First of all, it was loud in there and she was in a contained space. Like, she was probably just screaming to be heard. Like, it didn't sound like she was like berating anyone to me. Second of all, like, even if she was, so like, obviously I don't condone people being like mean to their assistants or whatever, but like, take into the context of like, it's a stressful time, someone's first Met Gala. Like, I went to go look this up because I saw people talking about it online, and the way that I thought that she was going to be like verbally abusing someone, and she was literally just like, get an umbrella. Like, why are people mad about her being that way? I don't know. Doechii stan. Doechii stan over here. And yeah, if we're gonna let Steve Jobs let his children live on welfare and still idolize him, if we're gonna platform abusers and elect them as president, like, yeah, I'm gonna let Doechii talk in the loud voice during a stressful moment. I'm gonna let that one slide, personally. Speaking of the Met, Anna Wintour is always called cold. Nicki Minaj is too angry. Taylor Swift is calculating or promiscuous or whatever. her. And don't even get me started on Kamala Harris. It's too soon. I can't go into the fuckery that was the narratives around her during the last election, especially considering who she was up against. Like the fact that people really sat there and said, I don't think she's qualified, and then voted that man into office. That honestly tells me everything I need to know about like misogyny in the world today. But we're not ready to have that conversation in America, are we? Yeah, women are scrutinized. Meanwhile, male CEOs get to throw tantrums and get a Harvard Business Review profile. Like a man flips a table and he's intense, he's powerful. And a woman sighs too loudly and they're like, lobotomy, get her a lobotomy right now. Too many emotions. And I would be remiss to talk about the negative impacts of the tortured male genius and the massive amount of rope and slack that we give them without talking about none other than Elon Musk, the tech bro emperor with no clothes. Yeah, I think it's about time that we review the man who's currently LARPing as Iron Man while accidentally tanking social media platforms and pretending to be the voice of freedom. Let's get one thing straight. He did not found Tesla. That's right. Tesla was founded by engineers Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning. Elon came in later with daddy's apartheid emerald mine money and his flair for lawsuits and sued to be called co-founder. Imagine suing your way into a legacy that you didn't build. He is the epitome of failing upward. X was a functioning platform before he bought it for $44 billion with a B dollars and turned it into some glitchy playground for far-right trolls, shirtless libertarians, and crypto bots. And Elon, as you might have heard, is allegedly high on ketamine all of the time. Wish I was joking, but I'm not. This has been reported by multiple outlets and even confirmed by him. But don't worry, he says it's for depression. Which, okay, but imagine a woman CEO publicly admitting that she was using a horse tranquilizer and also running billion-dollar companies and influencing a government for a country that she's not from, and bringing her child to the White House while, like, during press briefings. The headlines would write themselves. And this man is just like failing upwards, puppet master with zero qualifications, and she doesn't even go here. She's South African. And if you're wondering why that's a problem, SpaceX has $15 billion worth of deals with the US military and NASA. You see how that might be a conflict of interest? He controls Starlink, which, if you don't know, Ukraine relies on for battlefield communications. And for the record, no, you didn't vote for him. No one did. But somehow he's become the de facto tech warlord. And let's not forget Dogecoin. He memed it, he pumped it, and he dumped it. People lost money and he gained clout. Like that alone is sketchy behavior. And then went from Dogecoin dumper to head of Doge in our government. But he can't even do that right because he Roman saluted too close to the sun. And we were not here for it. Yes, so we stood our ground on that one, and Tesla is tanking. People are giving their Teslas away, essentially, selling them as fast as they can. No one wants to be associated with that. And Teslas are burning, and so is the stock. And there have been protests pretty much every weekend saying, we do not want this oligarchy, Elon Musk, Trump duo, GTFO. So he did. Musk took a step back from his role because he wasn't very good at leading the Department of Government Efficiency, aka Doge. And also, allegedly, no one in the White House liked him or liked working with him, and that was another reason he took a step back. But let's not brush past the Tesla of it all. Round of applause for the correct reaction to a Roman salute, because the Tesla stock has tanked 35% since January. Tesla's being sued for allegedly manipulating the odometer, which would lead to premature warranty expirations, which would leave owners on the hook for the repairs. This lawsuit could involve over 1 million vehicles. So just to recap, he's cutting budgets, hyping crypto, getting sued, and still being called a genius. If a woman did half of this, she would be called unstable and possibly jailed. They've lobotomized women for a lot less. I know it's a different time, but that's the era they want to make it great back to. And yet people still, to this day, see Elon Musk as like this genius and visionary and future of humanity. The reason I'm spending so much talking about Elon Musk is because I, for so long, have seen the writings on the wall and have had so many arguments for like the past 5 years with people who are like, no. Elon didn't mean it like that. He's just so smart and he's not really good at being social. Oh, no. Elon didn't mean it like that. He's just not great with the press. Oh, no. Elon was just trolling because he's a troll, but he's really smart. So that's what it is. Like, I keep seeing people make all these excuses. And most of people have caught up with the fact that like you can't excuse, there's certain behaviors you just can't excuse. You got to see what's going on. Like your eyes are seeing it. But he was able to rise, to fail upwards to power for so long because of this like male genius myth that the patriarchy perpetuates that lets men get away with so much just because they're smart and they're innovative and they're changing the world. Like we could have stopped Elon long ago, but people were so busy to make excuses and like infantilize him and make him so cute when he was saying like racist stuff, when he was promoting eugenics, when he was like doing horrible things. Like this isn't new that he is like incredibly racist and horrible to like women and people in general. All that to say, the genius myth is just the patriarchy in a turtleneck because genius isn't gendered, even though history somehow decided it was. And there are so many things that are like so complicit in this. Let's first of all think about the way that like genius is gendered through language. Men are often called brilliant, innovative, and a genius, and women are often called hardworking, gifted, or intuitive. Think of how often we say female scientist or woman comedian. Like your gender shouldn't put you in a whole different category. And our education around this is complicit as well. School curriculum still center male contributions, especially the white male contributions. Women in STEM, politics, and art are often relegated to the margins if they're even mentioned at all. So the next time you think about giving a man leeway because of how smart he is, of how much potential he has, think again. Let's work together and dismantle that internalized misogyny the patriarchy has given us. The patriarchy, the gift that keeps on giving. So much more to say on that topic. So let me know if you would like me to dive in deeper, because there's a lot of directions that could take it. But with the slashing of DEI and critical race theory from schools and LGBT books in schools and all of these things happening in our government, I just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about what's at stake here. Because we've had a history that doesn't teach about Black people, Indigenous people, brown people, women, trans people, queer people. Like we've had that. That's been the norm. And the outcome of that is these people get erased from history. The importance they played in our medicine and our science and our history just gets erased. One of the reasons we should study history is because if you don't study history, you're bound to repeat it. And of course, that's important. Of course, that's true. But I would like us to also think about that if we aren't being taught this history, we are being deprived of the full story and the full connectedness that humanity and our time on Earth has to offer us. So let's do better and let's be better. Thank you for joining me today. If you think Elon Musk is a twat, share this with a friend who also does, because you're in good company here. I hope to see you next week. In the meantime, share, like, subscribe, do all the things. Thank you again for joining. Sending you lots of love. Mwah. Bye.